Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to our Impact Tuesday for November. Now, as you know, in the past couple of months, we've been focusing a lot on all the different types of waste and how we can become more conscious and visible about actually thinking about what we throw away and what goes to the landfill. This month, we have a treat. Not only do we have an entrepreneur who's going to tell us about e-waste and why we should be more conscious about it, but he's invited along their partner and customer, DHL Express. Welcome Mo from Earth and welcome King from DHL Express. Thank you so much for joining us for Impact Tuesday.
Thank you, Renu.
Thank you.
So let me just kick off by maybe giving a little bit of overview of Impact Tuesday and why we do it. Impact Tuesday is Proficeo's sustainability brand. We decided that there are a lot of initiatives that are happening on the ground with social impact organizations, social enterprises, and startups like Mo that perhaps the general public don't know about. And although the startups themselves are actually working very hard in building their businesses, in a small way, what we hope is by recording events like this and hearing more about the why and the how and what we can all do personally, it kind of stays online in perpetuity for whoever wants to listen to it whenever they can. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing these Impact Tuesday events. Now, if I can maybe not take too much time and start getting on with e-waste and invite Mo perhaps to tell us a little bit about Earth as well as e-waste and why we should care. Over to you, Mo.
Cool. Thank you, Renu. So my name is Muhammad Tariq. I'm the founder of Earth. And Earth deals with electronic recycling. We are a digital platform enabling households and businesses to recycle their electronics conveniently and in a proper way. So we are, for example, very happy to have DHL Express Malaysia as one of our customers, as they are one of the top 100 companies in the world. We had a strong alignment in vision. We actually started working together pre-MCO in 2020, and then after the MCO, we extended our partnership even further. So we have already been working for more than 2 years together. So the way we see it is that e-waste is one of the most critical problems of our age, because for the last 2 decades, innovation in technology has accelerated rapidly. But whenever you talk to even the most innovative technology companies about, do they know what actually happens at the end of the life cycle of their devices, it often comes up as an afterthought. No one actually thinks about that from the very beginning when they design the product, when they're seeing the customer life cycle. They don't have really a take back program. Most of them don't, at least here in Malaysia. And that's why, according to the Global E-Waste Monitor, the average recycling rate globally is only 17.4%. So that is a very, very sad reality, that over 80% of the e-waste in the world is not properly recycled, which means that it either ends up in the landfills, or it ends up recycled by the informal sector, who are not properly equipped with the knowledge and the tools in order to do it in a safe way that does not harm the environment, as well as does not harm the people that are actually processing this material. So this is something that Earth is trying to resolve. We are working closely with the Jabatan Alam Sekitar to try to divert as much e-waste as possible from the informal sector and landfills, try to divert it into the formal sector. So Earth is not even processing the material. We actually rely on the existing licensed infrastructure. There is more than 58 licensed processors in Malaysia that are fully equipped to recycle this e-waste, but there is a missing link between the waste generator, whether it's a company or a household, and the processor, because the processor already have enough challenges They need to keep the factory open. They need to comply with all the environmental SOPs. They need to hire the staff. So they already have a lot to do. So they can't also be involved with the logistics, because logistics, as probably DHL Express would vouch, is already complicated business in itself. So all of these factories do not necessarily have the logistical infrastructure to collect. So they're just waiting for the e-waste to come to them to process it. And that's why we come in and we help with that logistical missing link in order to divert it to the formal sector. So that was the introduction, a little bit long, but yeah, let's talk more later on.
Yeah, so thank you, Mo. And I think that it's very apparent that you're not just knowledgeable, but you're also very passionate about this area. And you unpacked a lot of information that I think for a first-time listener, or for people who want to do more and understand, it may actually be a little bit overwhelming to try and understand all of that. If I recall, you mentioned you did actually have a deck to share with us, so that we can visually see perhaps some of what this is. Maybe it's a good time now to bring that up.
Yes, sure. So let me do that. So so here we go. So the average person uses 200 electronic devices during their lifetime. So that is about 1 ton of e-waste that they contribute to the planet after they're gone. As I said, unfortunately, most of it ends up looking like this. So it's world's fastest growing waste stream. It's toxic pollution for centuries. And it's also billions of dollars that are lost forever. So we are literally handing over this problem to our children and grandchildren and just expecting them to have to deal with it at a later date. So I think that this problem needs action right now. So if we look at the existing players in the industry, so you will see that, depending on what kind of player they are, whether they're the landfills, recycling centers, secondhand shops, each of them have a different pain point, which make it not very easy for households and businesses to recycle properly. And that is actually what Earth is trying to address. We're trying to eliminate all the friction and all the pain points to make it as easy as possible for households and businesses to recycle. So just to give you some statistics, from April to September 2022, we have collected a total of 16,310 different devices. As you can see from this pie chart, the #1 device that we have collected was mobile phones. So obviously, all of us have a drawer full of old mobile phones at home. So as you can see, 32% of what we collected was mobile phones. Then we have the rest of the categories: laptop, desktop, monitor, tablet, and printer. So mostly it's IT devices, but we also have around 31% is a mix of all the other devices, blender, iron, and so on. Our total impact to date, we have collected more than 750,000 kilograms of electronic devices. This includes both our business customers, such as DHL Express, as well as the household. Our heroes, the freelancers who go around and collect the e-waste, they're actually earning 50% more than driving with Grab. So that's something that we are very proud of. Our heroes, if they dedicate their full time to Earth, they are able to get an M40 income. So not just the B40 income, but rather an M40 income. We have already provided more than 3,000 devices, refurbished devices, to the B40 community. So that is also one of the major social impacts that we are very proud of. And we were named in 2021 the #1 authorized collection center in Malaysia by the Jabatan Umum Sekitar. And we are officially recognized by the UN as an SDG innovation. So that's the end of my deck. So let's go back.
Thank you, Mo. And again, there's a whole host of questions that I have. But before we get more into Earth and what you do, I think I'd like to kind of invite King to come on board now and help us understand from a DHL perspective with regards to sustainability and waste management, and also then e-waste. What are DHL's stand? What is the sustainability agenda? Maybe you can help us understand a little bit more about that, King.
Okay, sure. I'll share my slides. Share my screen first. Okay. Yep. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Just an introduction. My name is King. I am the industrial engineer and also the Go Green lead for DHL Express Malaysia, which works on sustainability initiatives across the organization. So for today's session, right, I think I'll try to keep it as concise as possible, right, covering most of the topics, and then at the same time diving into today's topic, which is e-waste through our collaboration with Earth. I think introduction as a whole, sustainability, it's a big word right now, right? A lot of companies are doing it. And this is a quote from our CEO, Dr. Frank Apple, right? The DHL Group CEO. So there's no way around sustainability logistics in the future. We are deciding today what kind of world we and our children will live in 30 years from now. So when I conduct trainings and when I work with our employees, I will always tell them, now we might not feel the impact today, right? But if you have children, you have family down the road, right? They will be impacted by our actions today. Okay, so as a whole, there is this. So logistics is an industry that it's a very big industry, right? So in 2021, DPDHL, right? Our carbon footprint is 39.4 million tons of CO2 equivalent, and the whole industry itself is 3.5 billion tons of CO2e, right? And then as a company, we are the 11th largest employer in the world, and we operate in 220 countries and territory, right? And we have an employee of around 590,000 colleagues across the globe. So there's a very big impact that we have, footprint that we have in the world. So as a whole, right, I'll just focus on what is important here. Let me just hide this side. Okay. Yep. So you can see this is a snapshot of our sustainability goals and what we have achieved across the years. So number one, when it comes to sustainability, is education, right? Training of our people. That is the most important part that we work on, right? As you can see here, we have more than 70,000 employees trained as certified Go Green specialists, right? So it's an in-house module. Number one, what we always start to do is educating our people first, right? Our colleagues or our peers might not know what is their impact in the environment, right? As Mo mentioned, right, we use more than 200 electronic devices, right, across our lifetime. And then we might not know and might not care at this moment on what that impact will be, right? So number one, people, and number two is infrastructure. So for us, as such a huge company, right, we have a lot of infrastructure, buildings, vehicles, and such. So what we want to do to reduce those emissions is at this moment, right, we have 86% green electricity worldwide. So we want to generate renewable energy. And then also we have 21,000 of alternative drive vehicles on the road right now, right? With our mission, right, net zero emission by 2050. That's our target, and that's what we want to achieve, and it's what we aim for right now. We have multiple partners across the in Malaysia. So for Go Teach, what does Go Teach do? Go Teach is, in short, improving employability. We work with multiple partners, Teach from Malaysia, ASEX, and etc., to improve employability. And Go Help is our disaster management, right? Where we especially now it's flooding season, So we have actually started our works with helping with the flood victims and also last year's major flood victims as well. And Go Green is where we have Earth working together, which does protecting the environment. And then Go Trade is facilitating trade in the country, right, with all our partners here. Okay. In Malaysia, all our employees in Malaysia are trained with certified Go Green specialists. So it's a foundation module in-house trained where we have not just myself, right? We have trainers that I have trained. They are training people as well. So I think that is the most important, to be an ambassador for sustainability and to educate them. So how that will educate is also through our partners. So I think more we do have the earth recycling e-waste bins, right, in our facility and in TM as well. So every time when I see my colleagues actually bringing their own e-waste into the company and then putting into the bin for collection, I think that really fills my heart, because that shows that our education is working, right? And then where we are right now in terms of e-waste, right? We have 6.6 tons of e-waste recycled as of today with Earth, right? And then also I will share more on recycling today, right? We have 30 reverse vending machine up and running, which I will share more later. Okay, right? These details I think Mo has shared. I won't delve into it. So yeah, I think this was in 2020, right? When Mo was in our office in Menara TM, right? Where if you see from the numbers here, even through the pandemic, right? Our numbers are only going up, right? Reason because I think where these e-waste are coming from, number one, all big companies or big enterprises have a scheduled waste. I think scheduled waste is a term where we have our laptops, our computer, after a certain number of years, we will dispose them and get new ones, right? So this scheduled waste, usually what happened before we partnered up with Earth is these waste are actually just thrown into the landfill, right? So which pollutes the environment and it's not good. So I think we are very lucky. I think in 2019, I met up with Mo and then we're like, okay, let's work something out. And we have started a partnership, and I think that's history. And now we are long-lasting relationship with them where we would share, we would give them all our e-waste, right, to be recycled, to make sure that end-to-end is covered, right? While we improve our own infrastructure, right now, today, right, we need to think of what happens at the end of life, right? And where does that go? And that is very important as well. Okay. So that's a partnership with Earth. Sorry, I took longer than I'm supposed to, but I think I covered the topic that is required. Yeah.
It was great, and it was great to see that we have been doubling the amount of e-waste recycling every year since 2020. So yeah, thanks for that great progress.
Yeah, thank you, King. Honestly, when I asked you to put together some slides to help us understand, that to me was an education, actually, learning about all the different ways in which a company embraces sustainability. But what really struck me, I guess, is that it's got to come top down, because you started off with the message from your CEO. You talk about how education is important and how basically it trickles down into every single employee. And just listening to you, I can see that it's not something you say because you're paid as an employee, but you truly believe it. And I think that is true, I suppose, indoctrination of sustainability and understanding what it is. But coming back to the topic of today, right, and e-waste. I think before we get into the real collaboration between DHL and Mo, I think Mo, in your introduction, you didn't actually explain what Earth stands for, because you have a whole host of like different things that you do. And I think it'll be interesting for listeners to actually find out what ERTH to you means and why did you pick that name?
So ERTH stands for Electronic Recycling Through Heroes. Heroes are freelancers. Any regular folk who have a car, they can sign up as a hero and they can contribute to helping divert e-waste from landfills. They will be onboarded onto our system, and depending on their real-time location, our system will match some collection orders to them. And then they will proceed to do the collection and then deliver the items to our warehouse. So far, we have engaged in our 3 years in operation, more than 1,000 unique heroes. Of course, not all of them are logged in all the time into the system. Some of them do it only on a part-time basis, but we have already engaged more than 1,000. And at any given time, we have access to more than 250 heroes on any given day. So I think that is also comparable to some of the fleets of logistics companies. But of course, in our case, they are not salaried employees. So we only pay the freelance fee once they perform the pickup. So that helps us to keep our costs down, while at the same time being able to pay 50% more than, for example, driving for Grab, as I said in my slides. We actually used a very different formula than what is being used as an industry benchmark when we calculated the pay for our heroes. We have some data from all the e-hailing and p-hailing companies. We know how much they are paying on average per kilometer. So the easy thing to do would be to just look at what the industry is doing and do the same. But when we calculated how much would the average full-time hero earn using the industry benchmarks, we found out that the total they are able to earn is still below the M40 income level. And that was not acceptable for us, because if someone is dedicating their life, their full-time effort to helping the environment, so we actually consider them a hero, a real hero, that they should at least be earning an M40 wage. So we actually started from the official government figure for the M40 wage, and then we simply divided that by the average number of orders that are performed by our full-time heroes, and then we came up with the figure of how much we pay the heroes as a flat rate. So that is a part of our social impact. Since we make savings by not having them as salaried employees, that doesn't mean that they should not earn enough. So we are trying to play that part from the S, and then the environmental, diverting from landfills, is the E. And then, as Keng said, the G part, giving data. So DHL are very keen on tracking how much exactly they have recycled over the years, and they include that into their reports and so on. So now we have covered, the Holy Trinity, ESG.
Nice. So, there was actually a reason why I wanted you to explain all of that more, because I think that when we talk about waste, whether it's e-waste, food waste, textile waste, one of the biggest issues, I guess, that most consumers and even corporate sector has is, how do you get to the source? Because the most difficult thing is for everyone generating the waste, how do you get that to a place to ensure that it actually then can be dealt with? And your explanation basically, for me to summarize, essentially means that for the ordinary consumer or even B2B, because you don't have or don't want to have or chose not to have a full employment situation, you're actually working with the gig economy workers as well as people who just want to make a little bit more income, to convert all of them into e-waste heroes. In essence, that is how you deal with the tracking at source. But in addition to that, and listening to what King mentioned just now, the other way of doing it also is to have bins, right, at high traffic locations. And if I looked at the picture just now, I actually saw a e-waste bin that you and King was standing next to. So perhaps, I can invite Mo and King, and maybe King can start first, to talk a little bit about e-waste in DHL, right? I know you've got, a big sustainability plan and you've got scheduled waste and things like that, but tell us a little bit about the journey that DHL went through with Earth in educating as well as encouraging your employees, not just from where the bins are, but across, to think more about what is e-waste and what can they do about it, and why did you invest in a specific Earth e-waste bin?
Okay. Should I go first, Mo?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I think how Earth and DHL Express Malaysia started is, if I remember correctly, it was, I think I saw a bin somewhere, and then we sort of contacted, and then we realized that Mo is actually working with our other entity, which is DHL IT in Cyberjaya, right, which is helping along as well. And that's how we started the journey, and then how we connected. And once we rolled out, right, I won't go into detail on like how we set up everything, but once we set up the bins, right, bins are fairly simple. It is just a standard cardboard bin that is put in our main office here and our facilities, right? So I will just share two things, right? Number one is how, why we started working with Earth. Number one is because of purpose, right? Passion and purpose, right? As you can see from Mo, he's very passionate, right, in what he does. And I think that's important when it comes to sustainability, right? Money and cents can only pay a person to do certain things for a certain amount of time, but it takes more than just dollars to get us to do something meaningful that we might not reap the benefits in near future, right? So that's the passion from Mo. And then at the same time, also they are a startup, and they are the startup from started in Malaysia. So it's definitely like, as a big organization, right, we definitely want to support that, right? That is part of our responsibility to help the country grow as well, right? So those are the two, right? In terms of how do we educate and spread the message, right? It comes to, I think, in terms of 2 points, because we are a prominent brand, right? Where I think it is our responsibility as leaders in the industry to drive this whole sustainability journey with the country, right? In terms of number one, in terms of corporate, so how do we drive corporate education, right? It's through engagements like this, right? And when we go for conferences, whenever I have a meeting with to be a guest speaker in webinars or etc. These are the initiatives that I will share, right? Because we need more people to know, to be aware of Earth or any social companies out there, right? To make sure that they are reached, right? More people reach to them, right? So that's for corporate. And then in terms of our own people and our own people, I'll talk about my personal experiences through, I think, years. I think you see it since 2020, right? It's, even though it's just 2 years, but it's a continuous 2 years of education where you need to talk about waste, where do you dispose them of, ask the questions. When we start asking why, then we get interested in them. So one of the quick example that I think I've shared with Mo before is, I think in the year 2020 and 2021, right? I had calls, monthly calls with all the facilities across the country, right? And to work on initiatives, green initiatives that we work on. The first thing that we looked at is electricity consumption, right? What we use as an electricity, right? And we track basically whatever. If you don't measure, you can't improve, right? We need to start measuring. So by measuring our electricity consumption and making the facility team aware of what they're actually using, right? That's awareness. And number two is, okay, what's the action plan? So we actually had all the facilities put up notices, right, on the switches, and also on a daily briefing when they brief their team, right, to switch off lights when you don't use them, or switch off your computer when you don't use them, And the result is year on year, in 1 year's time, we managed to reduce our electricity consumption by 8%. And that's hundreds, thousands of ringgit saved, just like that. So that's an example of education. So it same goes to Earth as well. In the very beginning, when we put up those bins, we were like, what's that, right? And then that's when we start talking to more and more people from different departments. And I think last time I'm the person that calls Mo, okay, Mo, come collect the bin, right? But now it is my team members itself from the office, right? Which is not tasked to do this, but when they see the bin is full, they would call Mo and say, okay, come collect, right? Because that's part of the journey of education. I think it does not stop here. I think it continues throughout the whole journey as well. Yeah,
Very
I think
nice.
These are the main two
Very nice
points that I would like to share.
And Mo, I think, although I did ask the question about the journey, but I think also because we want to try and give the listeners as wide a view as possible. So once, you have a bin like this, or once your heroes have actually collected a lot of this e-waste, I noticed in your slides just now that you actually mentioned billions of dollars lost sitting in landfills. And I think that is an intriguing figure. And a lot of people also, and I always get asked this question about why is anyone, working in waste? It's like you cannot fathom, I guess, that waste can actually be valuable. And perhaps, I'd like you to spend a little bit of time talking about the value in waste, especially e-waste.
So that's definitely a great point. Actually, according to the United Nations, the value of the metals inside e-waste that are discarded on a yearly basis globally exceeds $62 billion. And now we're not talking about like the working devices or the spare parts. We're just talking about the metals that are inside the waste that can be recovered using pre-existing recovery technologies, which Malaysia has and many countries have. So that's already like 62 billion just from the metals. However, in our line of business, what we have discovered is that a big percentage, it's not the majority, but it is still very sizable percentage, let's say 15 to 20% of the devices that are discarded by households and companies are in some kind of working condition. So, for example, big organizations, now I'm not talking about DHL Express, I'm talking about in general, what we have seen from, our more than 5,000 customers is that they don't discard the computers because they are broken. They discard them because the finance department uses a 3-year depreciation model. And once the depreciation reaches 0, they must write off the assets and then send the list to the IT department. Please discard these devices. They are already 0 value. So it doesn't matter whether it's working or not, it will still be discarded. But in many cases, these are business grade units that can still function for a number of years beyond their discarding date. So should we send this to the landfill? That is what Earth is strongly against. So what we do is that we take these devices, for example, from DHL, we are collecting devices without any hard drive. So there is no data from DHL that is being discarded. So it's just the device without the hard drive. So we take these devices, we can harvest some spare parts from them that can help us to reassemble working units, or in some cases, the unit is already in a working condition from the get-go. So we just need to put in a new hard drive and then the unit can be used. So in that case, we have donated hundreds of devices free of charge to the B40 community, whether through schools or through NGOs. And these are things that, imagine, like you can walk into our warehouse and see hundreds of units that used to be someone's trash. Someone threw these away. But at the same time, they are all in working condition. They are all something that someone can use for a few years. And some people cannot afford to buy the new devices. So they don't mind to use a little bit of an older one for an affordable cost. So this is actually what we do. And DHL For example, just to look at this example in specific, so we have helped DHL recycle around 6.6 tons. Normally, processing factories, licensed processing factories, before Earth came around, they would approach DHL to recycle this kind of material, but their MOQ, because they are sending a full 3-ton lorry, is that you need to have 3 tons of e-waste so that I would send you my lorry and my staff. Yep. So it means that, for example, in the case of DHL, since 2020 until today, there would have only been 2 collections. Earth did over 30 collections during that time. So while the collection is like so infrequent and so far apart, it meant that DHL need to occupy valuable space at their HQ at Menara TM or at their depot in Shah Alam or whatever, just to store these old devices for many months until the processing factory would come to collect. And that's where Earth comes in, is that we have reduced the MOQ from 3,000 kilograms all the way down to 3 kilograms. So as little as 3 devices, we would already send the hero to clear it out bit by bit. So that is actually the role that we play, and we are very happy with the collaboration. And hopefully when we expand our footprint across Peninsular Malaysia and other countries, hope we can also continue to collaborate with DHL on the Go Green initiative.
Thank you, Mo. That was an excellent explanation about why there is value in waste. So we're coming up to the 45-minute mark. We're at 40 minutes now, and I really have got a ton of questions that I still would like to ask both of you. But since we're running out of time and I'd like to wrap up, I think I'd like to hear from both of you individually. And let's start with King, because I think that, when you started your presentation just now, King, we touched a little bit about sustainability and what it should mean to corporate sector. Whereas, although you see a lot more conversations happening, a lot more conferences, a lot more job titles with ESG and sustainability nowadays, it's still very much in its infancy outside of MNCs and perhaps GLCs. And I think that, as more and more of corporate Malaysia starts looking at sustainability, the key question on every CEO's mind, I guess, would be, is this worth my doing? Why should this be important to me as a CEO? Is it going to help my brand? Is it going to save me money? And actually, most of them ask the question first, is this going to save me money or is this going to cost me money? And I think that's a very valid question, because there is a lot of perception out there that green initiatives or going green may well be expensive. It's just like, having your organic produce as opposed to, mass produce is going to be more expensive. And I'd really like to hear your thoughts on what you think and what DHL, practices in terms of, is this worthwhile doing? Question number 1. Question number 2, does it actually benefit the company and how? And 3, is it expensive?
Okay, I think the first question, is it worth doing? Yes, right. There's no doubt it is a yes. 52 billion metric tons, that is the number that we emit every year as of the world. And if let's say mission 2050, that is 0, right? Right, we want to achieve net zero. I think not just DHL Express, all the companies also, there's net zero 2050, right? So imagine from 52 billion to 0, how does, and we are only, I think 2050, that's only 28, 27 years, right, to go.
Yeah.
That's not a long time at all. So drastic changes needs to happen, right? So if you ask worth doing, yes, it's definitely worth doing, because the world is not going to slow down in terms of warming, right? So that is number 1. And then in terms of Second question, what is it again? If you
The
don't mind
second
me
question
asking.
was, how do you actually, I also forgot. um, Number one was, is it worth doing? Number two, how do you actually calculate? Is this something that is going to cost money,
Okay.
or is it something that is going to be difficult to do?
Okay. Yeah, I think yeah, when we talk about in terms of the capex involved or the investment involved, right? DPDHL as a company, we want to be the market leader to actually drive the industry towards sustainability, right? However, I think relatively now in terms of the technology and availability in the country, let's talk about Malaysia, right? Let's take an EV, for example, electric vehicle, for example. It is almost 2 to 3 times the price of a standard vehicle right now, right? Pre the tax incentive from the government. So I think in terms of availability of technology, right? Suppliers or of new technology needs to come into Malaysia, right? And how they need to come, we require demand from the country to actually request for those technology to be in, right? So if it's too expensive, right, less people are going to want it. So I think in terms of the country, all parties, right, so the government, private sector, all sectors need to work together, right, with a whole plan and how to actually bring those new technologies into the country to make it more affordable for people like you and me to actually invest in them, right? So imagine a time where electric vehicle, it is as cheap as a normal vehicle that we have now. Let's say, for example, a Kalisa or a MyV, right? It can be that price range, right? I think more people will be willing to do so, right? Yeah. So in terms of, that's an example. And then
Question 3 was essentially, sorry to interrupt you. So question 3 was really like, these are big picture, right? National level agenda and environmental agenda. But for the company itself, how does it help them? Is it, from the perspective of brand? Is it from the perspective of, getting new customers? Is it just that, it'll help them save some money? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think first, the intention should be in terms of the environment, right? So when we say net zero carbon emission, so that's the environment. But if you think about it in the long run, right? So when we say, is it expensive now? Yes, right? Buying it is expensive now. However, right, if you think of the operating cost, right, throughout the whole journey. So I'll take EV again as an example, right? So buying EV might be more expensive now, right? However, the running costs, right, in terms of petrol, right, you're switching it with electricity. So you're talking about around 30 to 40% cheaper when it comes to running it in the future, right? So those are the operating costs that we see the opportunity in, right?
Thanks.
And then in terms of recycling and all those initiatives that we have, right? In the long run, it's going to create an impact, right, in the society and the country as a whole, right? Firstly, it's like this couple of years we are focusing a lot on educating not just DHL Express, but also the country as well, to get more people involved and drive the conversation between parties. And I think it's our responsibility to do so, and it will only continue from here.
That's fantastic. And we're going to end with more, just like we started with more. More, I want to hear your thoughts in terms of, perhaps because we're talking to DHL today, we'll focus more on the corporate sector. And, why should the corporate sector think a lot more about e-waste recycling? What is the benefit to them? And how can they work with Earth to achieve those objectives?
So I think the good news here and this is actually the same thing that I said a couple of weeks ago during a talk at Bursa Malaysia, is that e-waste, as it is the Rolls-Royce waste, it has intrinsic value. The unit economics for Earth, for example, allow us to completely subsidize the logistics and manpower cost for our household and business customers. So, for example, we have helped DHL Express recycle 6.6 tons of e-waste in the last 2 years, and we have not charged a cent. And even in some cases, if companies actually want to even earn an income, they want to get paid the cash rewards that we normally pay to the public, it may also be still feasible to do so. So now there is no excuse. It's free. If you want to earn a revenue for your company, it might even be possible. You get the data for your sustainability reporting. You get the good publicity when, for example, you donate devices to the B40. So what is the excuse, really? I mean, why aren't all the companies doing this? There is just no reason not to do it, and that's what I said in my slide, is that we try to look at all the pain points and just try to resolve them one after the other, so that the e-waste recycling becomes just a matter of free will. If you just decide to do it, then you can do it. So that is our contribution to the economy, and I'm very glad to see that it has been well received. And even in some cases, we actually push our boundaries. So at this very moment, my team are actually driving from JB, collecting from one of our corporate customers there, even though we don't have a branch there. Next week, we're collecting from Alor Sotar, and then after that from Taiping and Greentown, Perak, and so on. So we are like expanding our footprint and subsidizing all of these logistics and manpower wherever we can, because we don't want to burden, we don't want to create friction for our customers, so that if we charge them, then maybe next time they are just gonna not do it. So we try to subsidize, carry it ourselves, even though we are only a 3-year-old startup and we are bootstrapping and we're trying to expand, but we still think that making it as easy as possible and as frictionless as possible is actually in the long term the right decision, because now it creates loyalty, and when people see that it's so easy, they are more likely to do it. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. So yeah, we just couldn't imagine. Actually, did you notice on Keng's slide, because that slide was from 2019, it said that the Earth has diverted 100,000 kilograms of e-waste. That was in 2019. And today is 750,000. So it's like 7.5 times in 2 years. So I'm very glad that our idea was well received in the market, and thanks to Keng and companies and our other customers from the Malaysian business community for believing in us, and we're happy to continue collaborating to make the world greener. And thank you, Renuka, for organizing this, because I really appreciate when organizations help us to amplify our message, because we never would have the budget to take big billboards at KLCC. It is awareness sessions like this that help us spread the word. So thank you for organizing this as well.
My pleasure. And
yeah,
I
think Renuka, I would like to
sure.
talk about what Mo has mentioned.
Sure.
Right? I think he mentioned in terms of corporate organizations and why, and dive back to what I mentioned in terms of responsibility, right? Companies, corporate companies, right? When your consumption is high, or anybody, right? When your consumption is high in terms of buying equipment or any consumption, right? It needs to go somewhere, right? Therefore, it is our responsibility as the bigger pie of the market, right, to actually channel that into the right place and to create a lasting impact. I think that is important. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. I thoroughly enjoyed that session. And if there was one message that I got from Mo, it was, what's the excuse? Because they've taken away no cost, no hassle, come to your doorstep and pick it up. And they also pay you and pay the guy that comes and picks it up from you. So it's, multiple levels of social and economic and environmental impact there. And from DHL, I think, it's highly admirable that it's not just in-house education or a company or corporate-wide education, but with the bins. I'm so happy to hear that there's a bin in TTDI in Shell, because all this while I've just been going to Shell to put my textile waste, but now I know that there is a reverse bin there as well. It is the corporate social responsibility, in a sense, to help people understand that recycling, whatever it may be, is actually important, and make it as easy as possible to help people recycle. And I think, one of the things that I particularly like to see from the 3 years of, DHL and Earth working together is, see the numbers literally growing double almost every year. And to me, what that shows is that, there is a multiplier effect of that education. It will always start with early adopters. Early adopters will talk to their families about it, will talk to their colleagues about it. People who see the bin will be a little bit more aware about it, and it just grows and grows and grows. And it's, the numbers were almost fictitious. It's like, 1,000 something, and then 2,000 something, and then 3,000 something. It was fantastic. So kudos to both of you for this relationship and partnership that has been built, and also for setting the example for all of us and helping us do more as citizens to actually help our Mother Earth. Thank you so much. This has been Impact Tuesday for November, where our focus has been on e-waste with Mo from Earth and Keng from DHL. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.